Dimension linear. Those are the next dimensioning tools that we're going to go over. First of all, I'm going to go back to my task, MoDOT Design CAD Standards, and go underneath the General Annotation group, and I'm going to select the one that says Dimension Small. And you'll notice that's going to bring up the Element Dimensioning tool, but it sets up my dimension style that I need, which is the one that I want, and also sets up my styles here at the top for my attributes, correct level, color, style, and weight. But now to get to my Dimension Linear tools, I'm going to go back to my MoDOT toolbar, and I'll select my dimensioning tools, and I'll select the second one that says Dimension Linear. Inside here you have many different options that were very similar to the element dimensioning tools, where you can change your view to true, or view or drawing, whatever that you need. You can change your location depending on how you want to place it, whether it's automatic or manual or semi-auto. And you also have a bunch of different options down below here, some different toggles that you turn off or on depending on how you want to place that dimension. We're not going to go over each one of those, but most of those should be self-explanatory by the wording of how it's underneath there for those options. Inside here you have three different options for dimensioning. You have linear size, linear stacked, or linear single. We're going to talk about these two right here for the line options for linear size and also linear stacked. So we'll select this one here first. Basically what you do is identify the start of the dimension, and since I have my snap mode set to key point, I'm going to key point this point right here. Now it says select dimension endpoint, and I'm going to use this as my endpoint right here. And now I'll determine where I want to place it at, whether it's above or below. Left click and drop it off. And now if I need to keep going, I could keep going. So if I wanted to dimension to this point right here, I could do that. If I wanted to go to another point, I could go to this one. And of course, if I'm done, I'll right click to reset it, and I'm finished. So I could keep going if I wish to do that, or if I just wanted to do a single one. Let me do a couple undos. Let's say I wanted to dimension from this point to this point. I can snap to this point first, come over here, snap to this endpoint right here, move it up or down depending on where I want to place that. Left click to drop it off, and then right click to reset it, and I have that dimension out there. So with the dimension linear, you begin, snap to your first point, snap to your end point, and then drag it up or down depending on where you want to place it at. Left click to drop it off, and if you want to keep going, you would left click to that next end point, or if I'm finished, I would right click to reset it, and I have my dimension out there. The next one is the linear stacked. So on this one here, it's actually going to stack it from the very beginning point that I had. If I still use this option here, just to show you the difference between the two here, I'm going to go to this one here, this point here, drag it down, and then I'll go to this point here to go to my next dimension, and then I'll go ahead and right click to reset it. But if I use my linear stacked option, which is this option right here, basically you kind of do the same thing. You begin or select your start point, which I'll use this one as my start point. I'm going to use this point here as my end point, so I'll snap to it. I'll move it up or down depending on where I want to place it at. I'll left click to drop it off. But you'll notice now, if I go to my next point, it's still tagged to that very first point that I selected. So it's stacking my dimensions as I go up. So if I snap to this point now, you'll see it's going to that one. If I went to another point, you know, it would keep stacking if I kept left clicking. And then once I'm finished, I'll right click to reset it, and I'm finished. So that's what the stack does. It starts it at that very first point that you go from, and it'll keep stacking those dimensions up from that very first point that I selected for that type of dimensioning. So that's the stacked. Now there is an option, like I said, we're not going to talk about this one right here. This is linear single. I'm not going to worry about that one. But you do have an option that says select multiple elements, which is this option right here. So if I had multiple elements, let's say this line, this one, and this one, and I want to dimension all those in one shot, you could use this option right here that says select multiple elements. And what that will do is it'll say select start of the selection line. So anything that crosses that line will be dimensioned. So I'll left click once, drag it across the elements that I want to dimension. Now I'll determine where I want to place it at, whether it's above or below. You kind of have to watch whenever you do that, because right now if I drag it on the lower side of it, you'll see that I have my gap, of course, on the lower side, but if I pull it up, you'll see that my gap is still tagged to that bottom key point. So I'm going to right click to reset it, and I'll actually drag it here at the top, drag across those lines, left click to select it, and now you'll notice if I move it up, you'll see that it's tagged to the top point to dimension that. And since I have it set to linear stacked right now, it's going to stack those dimensions. Left click, place it, and I'm done. Or I could do linear size, and if I did the same thing, but this time I'll do it on the lower side of it. I'll left click once, drag it across, left click again to accept it. You'll notice that I'll have basically separate dimensions for each one of those spaces in between there. So this one here, basically all it does is it allows you to select multiple elements and dimension all those in one shot. And then depending on which option that you have set up will determine what type of dimensioning that it will do. So that's linear dimensioning with the linear size and the linear stacked, and then the option that says select multiple elements. Like I said before, you do have these other options depending on if you need to change those. You can kind of determine those at your own need if you need to have an extension, not an extension, or if you need to change your view to something else, maybe true. You can do those if you need to. So that's the linear dimensioning tool.